Hey, welcome back to another episode of Girl Let's Talk podcast. I'm your host, Princess, and I'm so happy you're here. So today we're going to talk about 5 practical steps of birthing the promise, okay? So I'm super excited about this. I had the opportunity to partner with my friend Camry and Mom Village, and I was able to speak into the life of those ladies to kind of encourage them to get started. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go. So let's talk about this today. All right, so I have 5 steps. We just gonna get right in, if that's okay with you. We gonna get right in. Birthing the promises that God has put on your mind, on your heart, to be exact. Whatever God has called you to do, here are the steps that I have documented. Right? Okay, let me get to it. So the number one thing I want you to do when you are trying to execute and start is I want you to talk to God. That's the first thing you need to do. And that's always going to be the first thing. You need to talk to God. You need to ask Him what He wants you to do, when He wants you to do it, and how He wants you to do it. Starting with this first will save you a lot of trouble. It'll save you a lot of back and forthness. It'll save you a lot of unnecessary stuff that doesn't even need to take place, because you need to be seeking God about this anyway in the first place. If God gave it to you, He's gonna give you the instructions on what you need to do as well. The second thing I have is get out of your head. Okay? Stop overthinking, because you'll end up thinking your way out of it. You'll end up thinking your way out, right? Okay. Stop waiting for people to support you. Rule number 1, when God gives you a vision, when He tells you something that He wants you to do, you cannot sit around and wait on the people that you think is close to you support you. They may not support you for various different reasons. One of them could be that they're just not in that season in their life right now. And so what you're doing doesn't necessarily speak to them on a level of which it will speak to somebody else. We're all called to certain people. We are all called to a certain group of people. When you think about the disciples, each of them, their assignment was in different areas. Some of them went together on things like Paul and Silas? Listen, go read the Bible to be for sure, okay? But my point I'm trying to make is your calling isn't everybody else's calling. We are all called to different people. We're called to do different things. We have a different message, but it all leads back to Jesus Christ. It all leads back to the good news. But the things that you went through, the things that God has called you to, whether that is starting a business or starting a ministry, if God gave it to you, right? He didn't give it to nobody else. He gave it to you. He didn't have a conversation with you and your friend. He had a conversation with you. So don't wait for somebody to support you before you start doing what God told you to do. All right. Okay, so this is one thing that I low-key be having to tell myself. All of these things I have to tell myself, by the way. Stop waiting until everything is perfect. You cannot sit around and wait until you have everything perfect, all the I's dotted, all the T's crossed before you start to do it, like before you go out there and do it. God just wants to see that you're obedient. You got to trust that He's going to give you the next steps. You got to trust that He's with you. You may start off a little rough, you know what I'm saying? But as long as you are moving forward, that's the only way you're going to learn. You're never going to learn if you sit on your hands until you have everything perfect. All right. So get out of your head. Get out of your head. I did reference one thing about get out of your head, and it was the children of Israel. Notice when we look at that story, God reminds Joshua, He reminds Moses to tell the children of Israel and themselves to be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Why? Because I am with you. Who is I? God. This is repeated a lot. Because God already knew what they were up against. God already knew what they were getting ready to have to face. God is trying to build resilience within you, right? So when the children of Israel went to go and spy out the land, the only ones that had a good report was Joshua and Caleb. And they were the only ones that got to go to the promised land, because the rest of them, because they were in their heads, they was tripping. They tripped themselves out of the promise. They tripped themselves out of the promise. They were so afraid. They saw the giants and the fruit. I don't know. I think the grapes was as big as a head or something like that. Like they was tripping like we are so small compared to them. There's no way we're going to be able to do this. There's no way. Listen. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't talk yourself out of the promise that God has for you. Don't talk yourself out of the calling God has placed on your life. You got to trust and believe that he got you. If you say be strong and courageous, I want to encourage you right now. Be strong and courageous and go forth and do the thing that God called you to do, because God is with you. All right? So 3, get it out of your head. Okay, so the second one was get out of your head. This one is get it out of your head. And I'm telling you this because I need you to write it down. Okay, write it down and ask God for a strategy. The Bible says to write the vision and make it plain, right? It's something about when you actually get it out of your head and you're able to see it and visualize it and you're able to look at it, it does something differently to your brain. So I want to encourage you that whatever the vision is that God gave you, write it down. Write it down and then break it down using a list. What do you need to do? What do you know right now that you need to do to accomplish the first step? Right? What are some things that we put on ourselves that we don't even need to put on ourselves? Right? So if you are like, I can't start my business because I don't have a website yet. Why not? You can start your business without a website. What kind of business are you running? Oh, well, I can't start ministry because I don't have a bio yet. Why not? A bio can get developed, but that isn't going to stop you from starting your ministry. It's some things that we put as an excuse as to why we can't do the thing, right? And some things are just unnecessary. Like some stuff we can eliminate off the list altogether. But you want to write these things down so you can sort it out and prioritize what's the most important thing. And the first thing was you need to strategize with God, because God will give you the steps that you need to take up until you make that step. He's not going to, 9 times out of 10, he's not going to tell you what's next until you do the first thing. Because if he tells you what's next, you may try to back out like the Israelites. They were so scared to go and conquer the land, even though God told them not to be afraid, even though God told them that they were going to win, even though God was with them. They were still scared and they talked themselves out of the promise. So don't let that be you. So my 4th thing is put it to action. Okay? Do the first thing that God told you to do and then go back for the next steps. And then get help. So one of the Bible references that I love to mention is Joshua in the walls of Jericho. If you listen to me at all in the visionary settings, I'm always referencing Joshua. The reason why is because God gave Joshua a instruction, right? Joshua, what he did right that Moses did not do is he didn't go back to the whole crew and tell them what the plan was, right? He told them bit by bit. As God was telling him, he was telling them what we're going to do first. He not going to, you know what I'm saying? So they walked around that wall, they did what they needed to do, and then they went back to camp. Each day they did the same thing. They just want to know how they're going to get these walls down. Listen, sometimes what God tells you to do, it don't make sense. Sometimes what God is telling you to do doesn't make sense. Do it anyway. Long story short, the strategy that God gave Joshua worked and the walls of Jericho came down. It doesn't even matter. Imagine what the people were thinking. Like, why are we going back to camp? The wall's not down. We finna go and do the same thing. The wall's not even down yet. God has a strategic strategy as to how the thing is going to work out for you. You don't need to know how it's going to work out. You just need to be obedient and know that he is going to give you the direction on how that thing needs to work out. So the other thing is get help. We were not created to do this by ourselves. We were not created to do it by ourselves, and we shouldn't even be trying to do it by ourselves at all, period. So sometimes we need to outsource. Sometimes we need to delegate things out. So if you know that you're not a web designer, maybe you need to invest in getting someone to make your website. So here's the thing. God gave Moses instruction, right? There was a battle that they were facing, the children of Israel, and God said that they were going to win, right? But Moses had to hold up his staff, and he had to hold it up, and every time he dropped it, they started to lose. Y'all remember that? If you don't, go read it. Now, what ended up happening was, I believe it was Aaron and someone else came and helped him hold up his hand, hold up his staff. So as Moses was getting weak, he kept dropping, they kept losing. They held his hand, they held it up, they held his hand, his arm up for him so that they could win this battle. That shows that support is needed. And God will send you the proper support that you need to help you carry out the vision. But when God gives you a vision, I also want you to know that you don't need to sit here and think that you have to do it all by yourself. Like nobody else can help you with this vision because God didn't give it to them. You're correct, partly. But when God sends you somebody to help you, let them. I know it's your baby. I know that you have your own emotions and feelings over it, but listen. And my fifth and final point is don't leave God out. Okay? So oftentimes we can forget the gift giver. Once we get to a certain point, we're successful, things are working out, we think we know what we're doing. We can be oftentimes, without even realizing it, we leave God out of it. We start doing stuff. We ain't consult God. We ain't ask him if we should do this or not. Like we leaving him out. Don't let that be you. Don't stray away. Okay? Because of drifting, you know how you drift? Like imagine you're at the beach and you're on one of those floaties or something. You lay out there with your eyes closed and your sunglasses on or whatever. I don't encourage you to do that at all. You're going to be drifting away from shore. Little by little, it doesn't feel like you're really going anywhere, but all of a sudden you look up and you like in the middle of the ocean, way away from the beach, the shore. Don't let that be you. One of the characters in the Bible, David, is a really good example of what it looks like not to leave God out of it. He had his flaws and he messed up on some things, but for the most part, he always consulted with God. Even when it was time for him to take his rightful place as king of the Israelites, he still waited before he even went after Saul died. And so just keep God first. Keep God first. Don't compromise your integrity for anything. That's for somebody. Don't compromise your integrity, your character, in order to get a deal with this person that's about to change your life for all this money. It's not worth it. If it's going to compromise your integrity, if it's going to compromise your character, if it's going to compromise your relationship with God, leave it. Leave it at the table because God has something better for you. God wants to see that you're going to be faithful to him when he gives you what he promised you. The problem with the children of Israel, once they got into the promise and they got good, they kept saying like, yes, we're going to serve God, blah, 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 blah. After a while, they stopped. After a while, they started doing what everybody else was doing around them. They didn't kill all the people that reside in the land that they overtook, which was a part of their instruction, but they let some people live. And because of that, their customs and what their practices and the things that they were a part of, they started doing those things and they started worshiping their gods. They started cheating on God. Let's just be cut and dry. So I want to encourage you not to leave God out once you get that promise, okay? Be very careful. And my last thing I want to leave you with is to stop comparing yourself. Don't compare yourself with somebody else's journey. Don't compare yourself with somebody else's, what they're doing. Don't compare yourself because you don't know what they had to go through to get where they are. Okay? When we compare ourselves to other people, it's like telling God, I'm not satisfied with the way you made me. I don't think you did a good job. Let's be real. That's what it's like. God made you just the way he made you for a reason. He made them the way he made them for a reason. He doesn't need you to be like them. He needs you to be like yourself. That's key. So don't be tempted to look to the left or the right. Look straight ahead and focus on what God has called you to do so you can do and implement and be the best version of yourself that you can without mimicking and copying somebody else. All right? All right, so let me know if you got any questions. I left a link in the show notes and in the description box on YouTube, show notes on podcast. If you have any questions, leave them there. If you have a question that you want me to answer on the show that has nothing to do with this podcast, feel free to leave them there as well. I appreciate y'all, and I just want to leave you with this one last thing. Whatever it is that you do, be sure that you let it inspire others. All right? All right, y'all be blessed and see you later.